Okay, so here's another horse that we can work on getting on the bit. And again, it's very similar to the other horse. It's just about pressure and release. So when I put pressure on the reins, when I put pressure basically on his tongue and on his lower gums, I want him to drop his neck and flex at the pull and arc his neck. So I'll just start again like I did with the other horse. I take my hands a little wide, I feel each corner of his mouth, and I don't want to use more pressure than I need, but I also want to get a reaction from him. So here I take a little more pressure, there he gave, and then I release. And then I start again. You saw how when I released, he kind of just poked his nose out. So I need to get him like here, where he's giving, and then where I can release a little, but he doesn't poke that nose out. So again, I take a little pressure, I get him to give in, and then release. You can see with this horse too, sometimes he drops too low in his pull. Like we'd like him to stay up in his pull and just kind of flex at the pull and keep his pull the highest point. So I'll see if I can't help him, like when he tries to drop his head, I'll maybe lift my hand for a second and say, no, keep your pull up, but flex at the pull and get round. And you can see, like if you look at my hands, I'm really quick and clever with like kind of vibrate the bit in his mouth. I'm not just holding, and I have a bend in my elbows, I'm sitting on my seat bones. What a lot of people I see them do too is they tip a little forward like this off their seat bones, they straighten their arms like this, and then they say they want their horse to get round, which he's miraculously getting round, but usually that doesn't work. So if you're like to pitch forward and your arms straight and then you take pressure, it usually doesn't work. So again, sit into the saddle, get your butt connected, take a little feel of each corner of his mouth, ask him to give in. There, good boy. You're a good boy, Fargo. Okay, so another thing to think about just while you're sitting here is your position. So I always start, when I think about my position, I start with my hips. And you want your hips to be in a pretty neutral position. Like you don't want to have your back overly arched like this and your stomach too much out. And you also don't want to be slumped like this. You want your seat bones to stay pretty much up and down into the saddle. Another thing to consider is your leg position. Once you have your pelvis where it should be, you kind of check in with where your legs are. You want a nice straight line from your heel to your hip to your shoulder. So you don't want your legs like this, nor do you want your legs too far back. So you want your heel to be hanging right below your hip. And you also want, for a dressage seat, you want your inner thigh and your knee rolled into the saddle. So lots of people's legs tend to naturally go a little out like this. Their toe goes out and their knee comes out of the saddle. So you have to actually rotate from your hip flexor, your thigh in, and get that thigh into the saddle and your toe pointing forward. And then you also want to think about your upper body. So I always think of kind of pinching my shoulder blades to my spine. It's easy, you know, I think with everyday life we all get a little hunched forward like this. So really pulling those shoulder blades together, sitting up tall, having a bend in your elbows, having your thumbs up, palms facing each other, and then being able to use your wrist and ring finger to kind of manipulate the rein and get your horse to put his head down. Another thing to consider is your head position. I tend to always look down. When you look down, your head's really heavy. So where you're looking affects your whole spine and alignment. So you just want to be looking up and neutral.